Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Cohen, the author of An Introduction to the Art and Science of Chinese Tea Ceremony. Today, we're discussing Book 1, Section 3, Chapter 2, Use, Disuse, and the Experience of Meaning. Here to talk about this chapter is our editorial team, Patrick Penny and Ryan On. Hello, Pat and Ryan.
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Afternoon.
So my first question to both of you is, what did you think was missing from this chapter? Pat, let's start with you.
I think when I look at this chapter, I really did like the story you painted where we are thinking about, the experience of use and how our own senses really should be what contextualizes our experiences with a ware. And you start the chapter off with the Mei Yin Tang, right? The Duozai chicken cup. I felt that seeing the cup in the beginning, seeing the cup at the end, I really liked knowing the context. I really liked seeing that story. Looking at it from an outsider's perspective, though, I think I want to know more about that cup and why that cup is so relevant to the picture you were painting in this chapter.
And did that lead you to your own research, or did you find that because you already knew the story, that it resonated?
I already knew the story, right? So it resonated. I did still go back to a Sotheby's article, right, to just brush up a little bit. But, it resonated more with what you had written once I had reread the Sotheby's article as well. But yeah, I would say I felt that, if I didn't have that context coming into it, the story of the chicken cup might not have tied as well to what you wrote in the chapter.
I see. Ryan, the same question to you. What did you think was missing from this chapter?
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything specific that I thought was missing. One thing that kind of left me wanting a little bit or set me down a different train of thought was around you talk a lot about primary beauty, it being experiential, and you have to actually use it to fully appreciate it, to grok it, to get it, to understand its beauty. But by framing it with the chicken cup at the beginning and the end, you're talking about a very specific piece. And a lot of people talk about, museum ware that's behind glass, you can't use it, no one can experience that primary beauty. But at what point was it put behind glass and why? And if you flip the perspective, not on the user, but on the ware, on that specific cup, right? At what point, why was it stopped being used, or why does any ware stopped being used? And it just set me down an interesting train of thought.
And did anything about this chapter lead you to do more of your own research?
Well, I reread the chicken cup story, which I already knew. And I think the symbol that the gentleman who purchased it sent to the tea world, and really to the fine arts world, was really powerful.
Yeah, I think you write man after my own heart, right? Which I think we all feel the same way, right? Where's are meant to be used. And it did get me thinking as well, Jason, about an experience we had, right? So you and I think this was 2012. We had visited Nakamura Donen the fifth, right? The raku potter.
Yes.
And we got to make our own, maybe less skillful raku bowls with him. But we were gifted, right? Both of us were gifted a small raku cup. Gui no Mi, right? And the first thing, of course, you and I do is drink tea out of it. And it tasted terrible. It tasted like garbage. Beautiful, beautiful cup, but just did really bad things to tea. And reading this chapter, it got me thinking about that because, it's a piece of art. It's a beautiful looking cup, but its primary point of beauty is missing. It doesn't do anything for tea. It doesn't really do anything for any liquid that's in it, except recently I discovered sake, which is what it's made for. And so upon kind of trying more and more sake out of that cup, I've come to realize, okay, well, you know what? Nakamura Donen, of course, knew what he was doing. I just had to use the product for its primary function, right? And upon doing that, the beauty of the cup beyond just its aesthetics were shown to me, how it really influences the sake, how it kind of changes the mouthfeel to make it a little fuller, make some of the flavors a little brighter. Yeah, I had tried some sake out of it last week, and then this previous Saturday too. We're recording this on a Monday for all of our fans watching, and it both times I've just noticed totally different than any other cup that I had drank sake out of recently.
That is a beautiful answer, and I do have that cup, and I do continue to drink sake out of it. Ryan, what will you change about your own practice after reading this chapter?
Use my nice teaware.
Have you been reticent to use your nice teaware even throughout the pandemic and the quarantine?
Oh, I'm more careful. I mean, I try to keep the frequency of use lower, both to appreciate it more and to be fully present while I'm using it. But it's easy to get trapped in habits.
That is an interesting take. I find actually that I am drawn to increased use of my nicest wares, and that I have to purposely decide to use other wares or basic wares, or be challenged in some type of research or experiment to go back to the basics. It sounds like you are presenting the opposite.
I think I fall in the same camp as Ryan. I think where I end up definitely leaning towards my classics or my favorite wares. They come out a lot. And then similarly, upon reading this, I thought, wow, I should use, my nice things more. Like, who am I to think that the fine arts world, right, or these collectors should stop having things behind glass when I don't always use my nice wares either. So I think it just definitely challenged me to take things out more, use wares that I love, and to really focus on them while I'm using them.
That is a great point. The same question about research. Did you find that this chapter caused you to research anything related or unrelated? Did it inspire you to go look something up?
I would say that when I got to the Sotheby's article on the chicken cup, I had read a point that the imperial kilns stopped firing in 1485, which is 2 years before the Chenhua reign ended. So I was trying to follow down that rabbit hole, and I haven't gotten very far yet, but I'm still very interested and want to learn more about why, firing stopped at that year, because the later years of the Chenhua reign are what's most famous for their porcelain. Everything earlier on is just highly inspired by the Xuandi reign. And so, you'll hear a lot from collectors or researchers on the topic that the late years of Chenhua are really what they're known for, what the porcelain is known for. So I still can't find out why they stopped firing. Is that something that you've come across, Jason or Ryan?
I don't have a reference for those specific years off the cuff. At one point, imperial firings were halted or prevented because of an economic crisis at the court, and then were restarted later after an increase in taxation or a set of reforms. But I'm not sure if that was part of the 1485 halting, or if that was a later halting.
Yeah, well, I'll have to get back to both of you on that if I find more, for sure.
Ryan, where will this chapter generate contention or debate in the tea world?
Good question. I think a lot of the tea world is less focused on creating and crafting an experience and experiencing. It's very connoisseurship focused, but it's also very tea focused. Everyone uses the same types of wares to brew the same types of tea to evaluate, moving through samples, checking out new vendors, and a little bit less on acquiring specific pieces that have some role. Some might perform better for Shopoi versus Shang, or for different types of oolong, and express different characteristics of the tea. I think that's just generally an under talked about thing. So might be some contention there.
And Pat, same question to you. Where will this chapter generate contention or debate in the tea world?
I think agreeing a little bit with what Ryan was saying, that I think many might read this and just take it as fact, right? Because high level pieces, rare wares, or just curating or collecting fine pieces of art, I don't think is a big focus of the Western tea community. And certainly for many, right, there's no access. As I would put myself in that camp as well. There's very little access for me to obtain pieces like this due to just economic reasons. But I would say other than that, in the article, you do make a point about the primary purpose of the wear and its primary beauty being the real reason for the wear. And you think even in a footnote go on to write that you don't mean it controversially, but I do think there will be some controversy that people who believe a beautiful Yixing, right, that does terrible things to the tea, right, but that beautiful Yixing, right, is in itself a piece of art. I think we don't look at it that way. That Yixing's primary purpose is to brew tea, and if it does a bad job, then it's not a beautiful Yixing. But there's many collectors who I'm sure have wonderful collections of hundreds of Yixings, some of which probably aren't doing good things to tea, but look nice, who would definitely disagree with you. So I think that's where you'll find the most contention with what you wrote.
Do we see that in the Western world, or do we see that in the Chinese or Asian tea world?
I think the collectors of large volumes of ware or just collecting hasn't really moved on to the Western tea community. You have people collecting individualistic wares, so wares from a potter they like, who maybe is local or maybe is right somewhere in a different country. But you have people, I think, who have really subscribed to specific potters or specific aesthetics. But I would say less in the Western tea world do you have people collecting, right, just like Factory 1 or Factory 6 Yixing, right, from specific periods like white sticker or green sticker period. Less and less do you have people looking for like early Qing, cups or specific styles of cup, family rose plates, right? So I think that movement is starting to come more and more to the Western tea world, but it's largely, I would say, with the Eastern tea community.
And Pat, staying with you, what is the best counter argument for what we argue for in this chapter?
I would say it all comes down to using the ware, right? So if someone was to say that a ware, right, isn't judged only by its purpose, but by its physical beauty as well, right? The form and function that it takes, the form that it takes, not necessarily its function. I would specifically say within the application of tea, right? If it's not doing something for the tea, then why would you use it? And if you're not going to use it, then what's its purpose? Why do you have it? It can look great behind a shelf and that's nice and all, but then it might as well just be in a museum. Why own it if it's not going to do something for your tea?
And Ryan, if you wanted to play devil's advocate and argue for the existence of objects d'art and the appreciation of visual aesthetic beauty in tea or in tea ware, or the idea that certain wares belong in museums, how would you go about making that argument?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's about who experiences it. So if there is value in artistic beauty, there's only value so long as the item exists. And if the chicken cup breaks, or it breaks beyond point of repair, a lot of that beauty has been destroyed. And primary beauty can only be appreciated by the person drinking from the cup. So to a much greater degree, it cannot be a shared experience. And then also, if you plot out the expected lifetime of any object, if you increase frequency of use, you increase the probability that it breaks, and especially in diverse settings, and especially when you're spreading primary beauty in a way that other people can experience it. And so I think it is a selfish pursuit almost when these wares that are personally owned are taken off the market and you can't see it and it's only appreciated by its owner. I think would be the opposite argument.
Would it be correct to summarize your argument as preservation for the public good is a requisite for individuals to know and experience, or perhaps I should say learn, of the existence of this type of beauty and this type of wares and this type of tradition?
Yes, because context matters. No one buys an $18 million chicken cup because it has really good tea. Part of the experience is learning about the context, which is learned through other surviving wares in written history.
Well, that is a counter-argument in favor of preservation, but certainly preservation must be balanced with the propagation of the praxis, which could only be done using that ware. Should the use be lost to living memory, it is unclear whether it can be rebuilt, rediscovered, or whether the praxis would suffer a death through the loss of technique. That concludes our time today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this edition of Tea Technique Editorial Conversations. Please join us again for a discussion of the next chapter, The Future of Chinese Tea Ceremony.